Hello and welcome back to the NFL DFS slate breakdown for Monday Night Football. We got the Falcons and the Eagles tonight, and we are going to be breaking down that game, going position by position to look at everybody like we always do. Now, before we get into it, come join us at LineStar. $39.99 per month gets you access to everything we do, all the props, all the DFS. You get it all, one low price, and no better time to come join us than now. We are a month away from basketball. NFL is finishing week 2. It's a good time in DFS, and we got the end of baseball season. All right, let's get into it. So, high ownership. We got Jalen Hurts, highest owned quarterback as he should be. Kirk Cousins is next. Cousins definitely has some worries. So he was awful versus Pittsburgh last week. 26 attempts, 16 completions, only 155 yards, 2 interceptions, a touchdown. Couldn't move outside of the pocket. So we got some worries about his mobility for sure. Now, the Eagles have been a team you can pass against. So I am a little interested in Cousins at this low ownership. The one thing we do know, Cousins isn't going to break the game with his legs. So if you're using Cousins, make sure to use some of his pass catchers too, because it is extremely unlikely he's going to be in a winning lineup without one of the pass catchers. Jalen Hurts, tush push and all, they were still trying it in week 1 down in Brazil. So you got to believe the expectation is that is going to be a weekly thing. It didn't work that well week 1. Maybe they have made some corrections and changed it. I do know that Jason Kelce is always in that Eagles facility, working out and whatnot. So maybe he's given them some pointers too to make it a little more effective. So if so, there's a high chance of a Jalen Hurts rushing touchdown. And Jalen Hurts is without A.J. Brown, his best pass catcher. So throwing the ball might be a little bit harder for Hurts in this game, but he always has that rushing upside and that touchdown upside, which makes him interesting. Now, if the tush push isn't working and he's not able to get those easy touchdowns like he has in the past, then he might be a little too expensive. But on a 1-game sample size, $10K, I don't mind paying for him, but, there is some issues with it, obviously, especially at that ownership. Next, we got running back. We have Bijan Robinson, 10.4K, 59% owned, and Saquon Barkley, 10.6K, and 53% owned. Our projections heavily sway to Saquon Barkley's way. It is a little more explosive in offense. He has a longer track history of being a successful running back. He went absolutely nuts in week 1 with 109 yards rushing, 23 receiving, and 3 touchdowns. That's obviously not what we can expect week in and week out. However, we do know he is an absolute beast, has a giant ceiling. Thus, our projections are there as well. Consensus projections, however, do like Bijan Robinson a little bit more. A lot was made this offseason that Tyler Algier is going to be heavily involved. He had 3 carries. He had 3 touches. Bijan had 23 touches. He's heavily used in the passing game, heavily used in the rushing game. And I think his real upside does rely on that passing game work. So there's going to have to be some dump offs for him to really crush it. And I think you can do that versus Philly. So I don't mind some Bijan whatsoever. I think Saquon is the more likely to get it done, but it's really just because the Eagles are a little more explosive in offense. But I don't mind Bijan whatsoever. As far as the other guys, Gainwell involved a little bit. Algier got 3 carries. I would say maybe that goes up in the second game, up a little bit, but I wouldn't expect a ton. So it's a pretty much, and Will Shipley got nothing last game. So it is pretty much running back wise, Bijan or Barkley. Don't think I would really get too wild with one of the other guys. However you could. Gainwell did have kick return yards, so he is being used there. He could have a kick return touchdown. So that, possibility is there if you're clicking that name. Now let's go to the wide receiver spot. Like I said, A.J. Brown is out. Means we got a little of a mix-up in the wide receiver room for Philadelphia Eagles. Devonta Smith should be and is the highest owned receiver. He's 8.8K. I would expect his ownership to be extremely high and higher than we have it at 47%. I would expect 60, 70% on him probably as well. Now, looking at the other wide receivers here, Jahan Dotson went 42% of the snaps in week 1. That was also, after getting traded there, not too soon before that. So it is pretty clear that he is probably going to be the wide receiver 2 tonight. Wide receiver 3, who is questionable right now, is Johnny Dotson. If Dotson played 42%, I would expect Johnny Wilson. I would expect Wilson to play right around that 40% range. This guy is 6'6", 230 pounds, and runs a 2.5. They liked him a lot in preseason. He was expected to come in as the wide receiver 3, and for this game, he's going to. I think he's pretty interesting at 1K. He's going to get some work, and with that big body, if he is able to get a red zone target or two, it will be pretty interesting. I think there is possibility for Wilson to get it done, but Jahan Dotson is obviously the one expected to get more work and has been a very good red zone wide receiver in the past. He has 11 touchdowns over his first 2 seasons with Washington, which is obviously a worse offense, worse quarterback that he had, all of that going for him. That was 2 more touchdowns than Terry McLaurin did there. So he's obviously a bit of a red zone threat there. And then Devonta Smith is obviously the one that's going to get all the attention, but more coverage is going to roll his way. I think he's clearly in a good spot. Now, I do think that Drake London going 42% owned is likely a little bit too low owned, but I especially think Darnell Mooney is too low owned. He is coming in at 19% owned. This guy played 100% of dropbacks last game with Kirk Cousins. He did not leave the field. He only had 3 targets, but it was versus Pittsburgh, and they couldn't really get much done. This defense is not quite as good. He will probably get more targets, and he's going too low owned in my eyes, and I think we should probably have some more Darnell Mooney. Drake London, however, is obviously the WR1 on this offense, and I expect him to have a good season and definitely bounce back a bit from game 1. He's a great option as well, but as far as out of all of the wide receivers, I think Darnell Mooney is probably going a little too under-owned. Also, we probably don't even have him projected high enough. Consensus-wise, he is the third highest projected receiver, and that is, between him and Dotson, it should be right around there. I would probably give it to Mooney just by a hair, but both of them are very, very interesting. And Mooney is going at 19% owned. Sometimes for these showdowns, you don't need to lean into the projection quite as much. I would say more think of, the dynamics of what happens. What's the story that needs to happen for Darnell Mooney to have a good game? Who else needs to come along with him? Who does it hurt? And that kind of stuff when you're making your lineups. And now let's move it on to tight end. So we got Dallas Goedert, Kyle Pitts, obviously the 2 best tight ends on this. Kyle Pitts got a touchdown. In game one, he got 3 targets, had 3 receptions. All offseason, Kirk Cousins talked up Kyle Pitts a lot. And I think the ball is going to go to Pitts a ton this year. Now, I don't absolutely love this spot. We got him at a 1.2 or 1.5 alert score. He hasn't done as well outdoors. Partially is probably that he had Riddler last year and Arthur Smith. And Philly has done pretty well against the tight end. So I don't love the spot for Pitts, but he is the better or has the higher upside between him and Goddard. Now, in this game in particular, I think you got to go with Goddard over Pitts. He's cheaper, and with no A.J. Brown, targets are open. There's going to be a smaller target tree than there generally is in Philly, and that target tree was already small because all the work went to A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, and Devonta Smith, and obviously a little bit to Saquon. But you take the biggest target earner out of that, which was A.J. Brown, and those targets are going to get spread to Goddard, to Smith, to Saquon, Dotson a little bit. So I think Goddard is in a very interesting spot. And you could potentially go, Hurts with Goddard and, say, Dotson or Johnny Wilson. And you're getting way different just by fading Devonta Smith with that, where you could still get some of those extra targets that should be going to Goddard. Don't mind that way whatsoever. And then we got kickers and defense. I got to side with the Eagles here on defense. Ownership is as well. But as I always say, and this is my disclaimer every single time on these Monday night games, both defenses are absolutely in play. Doesn't take that much to make one of them happen. As long as these teams are passing, there's interception chance, sacks chances, and, interception return for a touchdown chances. Now, the sack fumble, those situations can happen. And in that situation, it also sides with Philly because Kirk Cousins, we have mobility issues with. So if there's pressure, there leads to a bigger chance of a possible sack fumble. So I definitely prefer Eagles defensively. However, they've spent a lot of money on that Falcons defense, and I think it's going to get better and better throughout the season. And then on to kicker. Both kickers are extremely good. I would expect the Falcons to fail a little bit more coming into the red zone than the Eagles. Thus, I give Young-Ho Koo the edge. But, you never know these days. With the fact of how scoring is, you don't even need to get to the red zone. If you're getting those 40, 50-yard field goals, you need less of them than those 30-yard ones. So either kicker, obviously in play. It is a way to get a little bit different with still have some decent upside there. So that will do it. Let's just make sure there's no big differences on FanDuel with the pricing. With quarterback, $3.5K difference for Cousins and Hurts. It's a lot. I would still probably favor Hurts, but Cousins is fine if you want to get a little bit different. Bijan and Saquon. Now, there is a giant difference between Bijan and Saquon Barkley. 2,500 between these two is wild to me, and I would heavily have Saquon over Bijan in this situation. Now, if Bijan's ownership is significantly less, that'll tilt me a little bit, but I like Saquon. And then Devonta Smith, 60% owned, by far the highest owned wide receiver, as he should be. But I think on FanDuel, we are heavily discarding the wide receiver twos, being Mooney and Dotson here. Then Ray McLeod, Johnny Wilson, you can still go there, but just less likely of them succeeding. But if they succeed, you're going to win a lot more because they are very low owned. Into tight end, only a $500 difference. I got to side with Goddard in this particular matchup, and defense, same goes with kicker and defense as it would on DK. That'll do it for us today, guys. Let's win some money. See you guys later this week with the Thursday night DFS and all the MLB shows. You guys have a good one. Good luck. Let's make some money. Peace.